Yeah, you were telling me you were, well, not a fan, but like more of a proponent of like laissez-faire capitalism and stuff.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. What do you want to know about that?
um, maybe I'll just pick.
Oh, you want me to say why I'm willing to defend such a system that everyone now hates and feels is discredited?
Well, sure. I mean, go ahead. Yeah.
Uh, let's talk about socialism. Yes.
Wait, what?
Before we talk about capitalism, we have to talk about socialism.
But like you do know, like the advent of socialism came about because of capitalism, right?
Or
Hey.
socialism is very simple. Communism even simpler. Socialism is the ownership of the means of production.
Mm-hmm.
Capitalism is the moneyless, stateless
Yep.
society, classless
Cashless.
society.
Yep.
The and under Marxist analysis, under the Marxist-Leninist model, you reach communism by first reaching full socialism.
Yep.
And most people go through full socialism, through partial socialism, and before that, it's social democracy, and before that, it's regulated capitalism and all of that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Fair.
So why am I a capitalist? Because I don't accept this dichotomy. I don't no, not dichotomy. I don't accept this transformative model of Marxist thinking. That is not to say that I'm a classical liberal. I'm more of a libertarian. People get the two mixed up all the time. But I believe in a couple of things: property rights, individual rights, human rights, not human rights, sorry. Firstly, there's your individual rights. Going back to capitalism, capitalism is an economic system that depends on private property. That's not a bad thing in itself because private property is an important right to exercise when you want to use resources to their full productive use. Whether you believe that labor or or whether you believe capital is defined by labor or subjective theory or your subjective wants or needs, everyone will people will on a natural basis with in lieu of state intervention will try to divide up parcels of land or divide up resources on a subjective basis on what they want to do. Think of all these socialist wives, these socialist wives who say, once we abolish capitalism, what are you going to do? They say musical therapy or whatever. They're offering their skills without money, blah, 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 for personal enjoyment or cooking. Well, think of capitalism in a different sense. Capitalism is not against psychological psychological fulfillment. It is simply a system. I really don't know how to explain this. It is simply a system of trade and exchange of spontaneous order. Now, of course, this doesn't always work very well. Take healthcare, for example. You know, as societies get more complex, people's needs evolve, and healthcare or say travel or transportation become eminently more chaotic. People will then find the need to regulate it because markets can become distorted out of natural or unnatural means, blah, 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 blah. This is, if you take an econ class and you'll know. But the whole point of capitalism comes down to a couple of fundamental tenets. For any society to embrace capitalism on a human level, they have to have some prerequisite beliefs. They have to believe that in a right to property. They have to believe in a right to life, and they have to believe the right to their liberty. They have to believe in natural rights. Then they have to take those natural rights and the right to property, because that's base one. Then they have to move over and say, well, how do we codify these rights? How do we make sure that I don't steal your spare ribs? How do I make sure that we have a fair exchange for my pizza for your spare ribs? Since we both believe in property, in the right to own property and exchange our property or to sell our labor, we need contracts that are and laws and legislation to help govern and regulate how we interact with each other.
All right. Before we get into all that, right, I'll stop you right there. And probably we'll just hop back on to healthcare, which was exactly the topic that I was gonna bring about. So in
Yeah.
terms of you were saying that how the market kind of distorts the um, relationship between the goods and services, demand and supply, and all that. But with something like you, as you mentioned yourself, with how complex healthcare is, right? It's you can't really apply the laws of econs really well to there, because like the demand is so inelastic for something like insulin. You can't really put a price on that. If you tell a person with diabetes, it's gonna be $600 for an injection or you die, or like obviously they're gonna pay the price, right? So how would then capitalism be able to solve certain things like that? Because it's profit driven, so
And, firstly, there's a whole branch of economics dedicated to this called healthcare economics. Most of them are not neoclassical, by the way, so you'll probably be more receptive to them. But economics is not limited to micro or macro. There are several subset of economics, such as agricultural economics, health economics, environmental economics, social economics. Um,
what I meant was like free market economics, like without
Free market.
regulations.
So, how would a laissez-faire system solve Kenneth Arrow's dilemma? Firstly, I think it would be one of the things that would probably be a trade-off between healthcare in this current world and healthcare in the next world, in this laissez-faire fantasy paradise, is a greater pluralism of healthcare treatment of people treating people with is a greater array of people who are in the market in the health in the hospitals. So right now, and I don't have a lot of experience with this, but I go in and out of hospitals all the time. The training time for to be a doctor is very long,
Mm-hmm.
very arduous.
Mm-hmm.
Licensing and regulations everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It's simply, and this is all very necessary to the functioning of a good medical system. And I would not have it any other way, but there are some inefficiencies with this. Firstly, with the training of doctors. It takes too long to train a doctor. It takes even longer for them to gain a license and then learn how to treat people and learn certain skills.
Okay,
This in
it's going a bit too lengthy with this. If you could summarize, how would you then solve?
All right,
Yeah.
okay. How do we solve the insulin problem? There would be there would be a right to try more medications, such as alternative insulin, synthetic insulin, more types of insulin. There would be more types of doctors everywhere. There would be freedom to choose the doctor you want, where you want to go, how you want to be treated. And I don't think that, and instead of cross subsidies where I pay taxes to pay for another person's health care, there would be direct subsidies where you get a top up for your health care in whatever country I happen to
So
rule.
right, but
Or
what I'm saying is like, okay, before we get into that, I think the problem of the pricing isn't really lack of doctors, right? And to touch on the point where you said you try like synthetic insulin and all that, um, I'm talking as of right now though, like because with medications like that, they go like to like phase one, phase two, phase three kind of thing. So it's gonna take way too long for that solution. And like even if it's possible, if it's a plausible solution that we create like more kinds of insulin, that won't necessarily reduce the price of it directly. If there is still if let's say I'm the patent owner, right? Why would I wanna charge it cheaply for all the research and development that I've put in and hiring all the people researching this and all that? I will basically price it maybe around the same price as insulin or maybe slightly cheaper. I don't know. And yeah, on that last bit with the sort of, I guess what you're alluding to at the end with the subsidies would be somewhat government implemented in.
drug companies have an incentive to charge the highest prices because for now, because they've spent a great deal of money. You're right. But the reason why they don't have an incentive to charge high prices forever is because a market will not keep paying. Sorry, sorry, because patents don't last forever. Eventually, for the cases of most drugs, not all drugs, mind you, I have to pay a very expensive medication, but there are some medications, older medications, 10, 15, 20, 50 years old, that are generics. Eventually, people who have generics, or when there's an open source patent, can make these medications for cheaper. Um, there was a time in America where you could get a generic for $4. I
Okay.
mean, now it's gone, but but
Yeah, in current context. So
in a current
yeah.
context, the incentive to lower your drug prices comes because you're not only serving more people, but more patients out there will buy your drug.
But if let's say you have a monopoly, right, on it, then they wouldn't have any other choice, would they?
Yes, and that's always a problem. But in the country that in most Western countries, most people don't have a patent forever. You have a patent for a certain amount of years, and then you're legally obligated to then at least allow more experimentation
Publicize it,
with
yeah. But as of right now, right, like, so what could then be the solution for these patients? Like, are they supposed to wait or like die in the meantime while the patents are?
there are a couple of solutions that we could do right now. The first solution is that we need to give patients the right to try medications that may not always be quote safe unquote.
So
So
like
this is
not
called right.
FDA approved, I guess.
So there are a lot of medications that are not approved by the FDA that are not approved by the MHRA or EMA that could work for a lot of people. This is especially true for genomics. We don't really have the technology for genomics isn't advanced enough so that we can have a perfect matching system. But if you're able to find the drug that you feel is right for you, trying it wouldn't be so bad. One of the examples that people get, I mean, you see this all the time. with people with ALS patients. There are a couple of drugs for them. They don't work as well as they should, but there are some on the horizon that work extremely well, maybe through, and they want that. But because it's not totally safe and it doesn't have total, it's not, it doesn't, there's not, there's a whole phase system. They want early tryouts. So so part of the liberal solution to medicine is allowing people to try drugs
Okay.
that other people that might not benefit the whole entire population, but might benefit certain subsets of population, be it schizophrenics, obese people, um, people who suffer from ALS.
But you could
Uh,
see why some people might be reluctant to do that, right? Which is why it's not been really pushed,
of course,
because it could be like
and
a
it's,
life or death kind of thing.
which is why medicine is quite a hard medicine, which is why healthcare is a very emotional topic. Firstly, healthcare is very hard to regulate on its own because people will always need healthcare. Secondly, healthcare costs have just been going up rapidly all the time for some reason. Part of this is because people are getting older. Part of this is because healthcare itself just does not seem to, not just healthcare provision, but healthcare research and medical science and the cost of training a doctor seems to go up every year. I mean, there is no way to do this for cheap.
I think okay, if we're talking like specifics, right? Certain drugs have been going down over the course of like the past few decades. So if like specifically if we look like painkillers and all that, those have been going down. But I guess what you're referring to is the in total the cost of healthcare, which includes a lot of things like education, training, and all that. And that's I think mostly boiled down to the discovery of new diseases and of course like research and everything else and the accumulation that goes into
Well,
that.
here's the good thing. There are some systems that are doing quite well with capping costs. The NHS is one of them, although they're not very good at keeping people alive. There are some systems that are expensive but are quite high quality. That's in Switzerland.
But
There's some
for the
that
NHS, right? It's isn't it the total opposite of what you're kind of proposing under your system
well, I
since
don't
it's
have a
government owned.
system of healthcare that I'm proposing because I don't really know the solution to healthcare woes. I want I want to get an Indian girlfriend and a Chinese girlfriend, and
Ratio how many, my guy?
I want them to fuck in front of me, and I want to film them, and I
What is
want
this call on, bro? I don't
and
even
then I,
know.
and then after about it. You know what I really notice about some Singaporeans sometimes that they really like the booth.
The
They
what?
really authoritarianism.
Are we enforced to like it though? That's the thing. Or do we really like it?
Some Singaporeans just have a natural affinity for it.
I think once you're being groomed under the system, it's really hard to differentiate whether you like it or whether you just have to follow it. I mean, if you look at our education system from young, right? Fear is already instilled. Yo, if you don't get a good education, you're gonna be like, I'm pretty sure you heard this line 1,000 times. You're gonna be like the cleaner across the street. You're gonna be homeless. Yada yada yada. Everything from like sex education to drugs and like gangs and everything's all taboo. Like the only path is literally education, and then we have like such high risks exams like the GCSEs and A levels, where literally that exam literally sets your life path for you, which honestly shouldn't be the case. Like you look at all the recent rising cases in NUS with all the sexual assaults and predators and shit like that. Like it all stems from childhood, and also like with the upbringing, one obviously, right, the socio-economic factors and all that, but like it's also the criterias that in which the school accepts its applicants. If everything is based on your education and you're a shit person overall, Like, don't be surprised if we have like such contrived individuals who come up with like fucked up intentions, or like who aren't really nice people in general, doing fucked up things, but like and coming from a well esteemed institution like NUS.
I've always thought, why did what is Singapore's strategy with the universities, given that they're trying to get every university to build something here? And what's the point of opening a new social sciences college if you already had Yale and US? Sorry.
Flooding labor market, reducing wages. Wow, that could be quite a couple though. I mean, all these top institutions, right? I think their main purpose is to serve the corporations in it. Like, that's basically the like what the corporations kind of do. They just come in for the cream of the crop, and that's how they filter out. Okay, like these are the people that I really want for my company because they could have adapted to the education system, which isn't necessarily all about intelligence, right? All of it is just regurgitation, memorization, and like just adaptations to like what the system wants you to be good at, right? So all the companies come in, okay, yeah, 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 this guy's good, this guy is shit because he's from a shit school, blah blah blah.
Well, you're probably right. God, am I slurring again now?